All right. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage my longtime friend, Charles.
My name's Charles. I'm an alcoholic. Charles. Hello. My sobriety date is June 4th, 2015. I'm celebrating 7 years today. It's kind of cool that I get to speak here at the Roundup. So if you were here for the Al-Anon speaker, then you've got a little bit of my story. My mom was the Al-Anon speaker. It's kind of funny, I was talking to somebody when I first got here, and I never heard this before, but somebody said that my mom is the Michael Vaughn of Al-Anon. And man, are they right. I ain't never going to forget that or look at Michael Vaughn the same. So, when I speak, which I haven't done in a long time, I was supposed to speak in 2019 at the Flag Roundup. That's when they had asked me to do it originally, and then COVID happened, and time passed in a couple of years, and I was like, I got away with not having to do that. And then JR hit me up and said, "You're still on." I said, "All right, I'll still do it." So just to kind of a little disclaimer, I believe in the traditions, I believe in singleness of purpose, but drugs are a huge part of my story. And so I'll try to keep it to drinking, because alcohol is definitely there. But if I happen to say some things, heroin, meth, stuff like that, I apologize. I hope I don't offend you, but if I do offend you, you're in the right place. My first head change was with alcohol. I had snuck out of my parents' house, got drunk with a buddy down at his house, and I thought that was the greatest thing ever, because even though it was just me and him and there wasn't a huge social situation or anything like that, I felt free. And what I felt free of was the burden of me, the burden that I had always felt like I was trapped inside of myself, and I couldn't be who I wanted to be because I was awkward, man. I was an awkward kid. I was an awkward teenager. And so I was 15 years old when that had happened. And I had dealt with bullying and getting picked on and wanting to be accepted by everybody and the cool kids and the it crowds. Even as far back to elementary school when the kids had a tag club that they would do at recess, and they wouldn't let me be part of that. And then my mom, being the great Al-Anon she is, called the school and made them take me into their tag club. I remember that. And, so I was always trying to fit in, but I never fit in, I never fit in. And when I took that drink and I got that head change, I fit in. Even though it was just me and my friend, I felt like I was free, like I could do anything. That was the greatest feeling I'd ever had. And I wanted to feel that all the time. I didn't want to be Charles. I wanted to be this guy that came out when I was messed up. So I did a little more drinking. Got into hard drugs pretty much instantly. I smoked weed one time. I didn't like it. I didn't like that feeling of paranoia that came with that. And but then I found, another drink that made me feel even better than anything else I had ever felt. And I wanted to do that all the time. And that was I guess it started as a liquid and then it crystallized, so maybe it was a form of alcohol. Probably not. But that was the first real hard stuff I went with. And I would sneak out again and go up to my buddy's house, and we'd do that all night, and then I'd sneak back in at before the sun came up, my parents were awake, and try to pretend like I'd been asleep. My heart's going a mile a minute, and I just want to go organize something. And but that was just kind of how it was. And that was in high school, right? And I had my job to thank for that one. Some guys that I was working with had introduced me to it, and I loved it. And also in high school was the first time I'd ever taken a pill. And, that starts out as a plant, which I guess beer starts out as a plant and tequila starts out as a plant. So there's some similarities there, so I can talk about that. And that was opiates. And that was the end-all be-all right there. because I could walk down the hallway at school and feel like I was king shit, right? I could hold my head up high, I could talk to anybody, I could do anything because I had that in my system and I felt great. And problems started to happen. You know, I was never a great student, but after that had started, I was definitely not a great student. Somehow graduated high school, took a hostage pretty young. Her name was Cassie, and you know, just became a real good codependent. You know, I've always needed somebody to validate me as a man. And in high school, you know, she was the hottest girl in school, and so like that validated me, you know, huge. That was, I am a man because look who I have, right? Graduated high school somehow. I think it was because my economics teacher didn't want me back. In fact, that's exactly why I graduated. But I made it through. Moved to Phoenix. And in Phoenix, it was interesting because I was out on my own and all my buddies were there. My buddies didn't really do a lot of drugs, but they drank. So, goddamn, if I didn't drink every night. Every night I was drinking. Almost lost my job. I was in UTI at a school. The school, not the infection, thank God. And I was doing that and just kind of like everything else. I'd gotten a bad habit when I was a kid of quitting things. I'd quit football, I'd quit baseball, I quit school. I mean, I graduated high school, but this trade school that I was in, I quit that, you know, and I didn't think twice about it. It was just, I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do this. You know, there was no perseverance, there was no stick-to-itiveness, there was just what I want right in this moment, what I don't want right in this moment is what I'm going to do. I'm impulsive. I'm still impulsive. I guess it's just less detrimental now, but I am still impulsive. My ex, she had ended up moving down there. We were living together. The drinking, and then by this time, drugs had started again. I was starting to get a little bit out of control. You know, everyone having to apologize for a lot of things that I couldn't remember. A lot of things that I could remember that I pretended I didn't remember because they were just too embarrassing to admit. And that, just a lot of problems started. Went away to my sister's wedding in 2008. By this time I had found turning the plant back into a liquid and then putting it in me was the way to go. And I was hiding it pretty well in the sense that everybody knew what I was doing, but I thought that they didn't, so I was hiding it pretty well. I was in a dune buggy accident and broke my back in 2008. And it came out pretty quick what I had been doing, because painkillers don't work as effective when you're constantly in a state of using painkillers. And had to have surgery. And when it had come out what I'd been doing, she stuck in there for a little bit. We had to move back in with my mom and dad in Flagstaff. And she left. She decided that it was time for her to go. And that's where I was devastated, because now this person that had validated me as a man was gone. So now I'm back to being nothing. I'm back to feeling like I'm nothing. I'm back to being awkward. And I have to depend on a substance again to give me that validation, to make me not feel the pain that I'm experiencing, because I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel anything. I just want to be in a state of oblivion. I want to be in oblivion all the time. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to be happy. I just don't want to be. And so I started doing things hard and going fast and stealing and robbing. My mom, you know, I'm very blessed to have my parents, my family in my life today, because of the when I go off, I'm like a boat. I'm like the you know, not just a boat, but like one of those cruise liners. And I'm the cruise liner, and I'm leaving this giant wake that just destroys everything in its path. You know, if a little troll boat, you know, my family or anything is in that path, it just gets tossed to the side and totally destroyed. And here's me just chugging along a happy cruise ship that doesn't care. I don't care. I'm selfish. I'm a selfish individual. I don't care how you feel. I don't, somebody could be crying in front of me, and that's not enough. That's not the frothy emotional appeal of my mom, my family, my dad, my ex-wife coming to me and crying their eyes out and saying, we don't want to see you die. We don't want to see you hurt. We don't want to see you do this to yourself. That's not enough to get me sober. That's enough for me to tell them what they want to hear and go about my way, right? Because I could sit there and apologize to you all day, looking you dead in the eyes, telling you everything you want to hear, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about who I'm going to call right after this awkward situation is over so I can get loaded again. And that's how I do things. I'm going to skip around. I haven't spoken a long time, so this is not going to be in any kind of accurate order. I'll try to keep it that way, but for the most part, I'm going to be here and there and over there, and just how my mind works. Because before the accident, I had gone to rehab. I remember I had gone out drinking with a buddy and had pissed my ex-wife off about something, I don't remember what. And had gone out drinking with a buddy, got loaded, came back, and when I got back to the apartment, banging on the door, she finally let me in, and at first all my shit was on the stoop outside, but she let me back in, and when I woke up in the morning, I could hear somebody snoring, and I knew she didn't snore that loud, and it sounded a lot like the hall that I had gone down when I was sneaking out of my house. My dad's in there in my living room snoring. She had called my parents, and they had come down to Phoenix that night and had a little intervention on me and convinced me to go to Chandler Valley Hope to my first rehab. I went there, and it was a nice little vacation. I went to their groups, and again, pretty good at telling people what they want to hear and acting emotional at all the right moments, and they had given me a chaplain when I was there, and it was this adorable little old lady. She was like an ex-nun or something like that, right? And they wanted you to work the steps while you were there, and I didn't want any part of that. When the groups would go out to meetings, I would stay behind. I didn't want any part of that. And then they were like, well, you're going to work the steps, and you've got to fill out this list of all the bad things you've done, and then you're going to meet with your chaplain, and you're going to do your fifth step where you tell them all the bad things you've done. And so I wrote all this stuff, and they put me in this room with this adorable little old lady, and I'm like, look at this paper, this stuff that I've done. I'm not talking to her about this. Like, it'd be like telling my grandma the things that I've done. Like, I don't want to do that. And so I picked a couple of things to tell her, and she asked me, okay, was that it? Were you thorough? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm thorough. And then she's like, well, let's go burn your list. It'll symbolize your misdeeds going up into the air. So I sat there with her by my side, and we burned that, and I nodded my head and acted all emotional. And the only emotion I had was relief that was over and that I could go back to my room. I got out of that rehab. My family had cleaned out my car for me while I was in there. And just the way things seemed to work in my life, as soon as I got in that car to drive, I'd been home for about a couple of hours. I went to Fry's Electronics down there. I got in my car when I came back out of the store, and there's a pill sitting on my floorboard. No idea where it came from. No idea. But it was there, and I took it right away, a couple hours out of rehab. And I was just right back where I started, and I was happy about that, because that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in that state of oblivion where I didn't have to be accountable for the things that I had done, the people I was hurting. I could just feel numb and good, and in my comfort area, my comfort zone. So let's fast forward back to where she's gone now, and I'm just running all over Flagstaff, just tearing up the streets, doing the dirt. And it's gotten real bad at this point. Now my mom's found Al-Anon, so I'm finding myself homeless, for periods of time. it's still what I want to do, but it's not as comfortable as it used to be, where I could get loaded and go out and rob and steal and act like a heathen and then come home and crawl into a nice bed and, oh, I made dinner, I'm not hungry. And things started to get real uncomfortable. To touch a little bit on how bad it was, I had gone out one night and I'd started getting arrested for the things that I was doing. First time I got arrested, my dad had called the cops on me because I had stolen a gun from the house and sold it. And my dad was just fed up with me and the things that I was doing. He didn't know what else to do, so he called the cops. And I'm sitting there in my manipulative ways, and I'm like, Dad, don't call the cops on me. They're going to rape me in jail. You don't have any idea how it is in there. And he's like, at least you'll be alive. And I was like, that's cold, Dad. That's cold. So I grabbed up everything I could, and I ran my little tweaking ass down the street, and the cops caught me before I reached the end of the block. And because there had been a gun involved, the cop, rolls up on his motorcycle and gets off and puts me at gunpoint. And I'm like, wow, this is real. This just got real, very quick. Took me to jail, and, I was very unfamiliar with the way our legal system worked. And so I was like, well, that's it. I'm going away for years. I was out 3 days later, and because they hadn't brought the charges. But that started the periods of time where I was just getting arrested consecutively. And people were telling me that, you need to not do anything and be good because they're letting you out and they're giving you enough rope and enough rope and enough rope, and you're building a good case against yourself. You're gonna go to prison is what's gonna happen. But to a person like me who doesn't care about anybody, anything, or any consequences, that didn't matter. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I'm not worried about what's going to happen to me a week from now. I'm worried about what I need right now in this moment. So let the consequences come. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I did. One of my best nights was I had done quite a bit of stuff and decided to go out and break into a house, I think is what my end goal was to go, and which was kind of my forte, I'm a skinny guy, and when I'm doing a lot of liquid that's now crystal, I'm even smaller, so I can get, a 100-pound frame through anything, B&E was pretty easy. Just slide my way into somewhere and take what I need and slide back out, so I decided I was going to go do that, and I wound up, I had done so much that I didn't know where I was or who I was or anything that was going on, and I had, to make a long story short, I was yelling at people that were in a hot tub because I was real mad because it was real cold out, it was snowing, and I was mad that they're in this nice looking hot tub. Well, that turned out to be one of those plastic manger sets that they put out at Christmas. Baby Jesus got an earful from me. The same house that manger scene was in front of, I broke into every car that was in that driveway. One of those cars had a bunch of canned food in the back. What a weirdo. He's got canned food in the back of his truck. So I started throwing those cans at the house and breaking windows, and then I let myself into the house, and the family was in there. And at one point I had yelled at them and tried to get them to come into one room. Apparently that's kidnapping. And trying to take hostages. Kind of came to just for a brief moment of what I was doing and where I was, and totally freaked out and ran down the hallway. Somebody was chasing me, and I had a fishing chair in my hand that I'd gotten from I don't know where, and hit around the corner, and the guy was coming, and I turned the corner, I smacked him with it, and I ran out of the house, and needless to say, that night I wound up in a cop car again, probably about it was close to 30 felonies that I had racked up that night. And I went to jail. And I thought that for sure that was the last straw. That was it. They're keeping me this time. And I remember a moment of clarity. I was in the cop car, and the cops are outside, and they've taken me so that this guy could identify me. And I'm in the cop car. They took me out real quick, put me back in, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I was convinced that there was cameras in the cop car that were filming me back there, to use in court or whatever. And I can remember telling, this camera, whether it was real or not, to not let me out because I'm just going to do it again. And I was verbalizing those words, those thoughts. I knew that this was not going to stop. This is just going to get worse. I'm just going to keep doing this. The only way you guys can stop me is by keeping me locked up, because nothing else works. There's no rehab they've built yet that can keep me, is that something to be proud of? No, but that's what happens. I go to rehab, I leave rehab, the guidance center, I don't know how many times, maybe it was twice, I went and left, thought I could do it, didn't do it, I leave. So I knew, that the only way that they could stop me was keep me locked up. So they took me in, they put me in a pod, and I kind of settled in. I was like, I'm going to be here for a while. And I was out within 7 days. And I left that jail and went straight back to the trailer where I had scored from before that had happened. Because that's what I knew. That's where I wanted to be. There's no survival instincts anymore. There's no food, shelter, sex. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is staying loaded. That was it. That was my only survival instinct, is how am I going to get it? Because that's what I need to live. And that's what I would do. So I went right back to the place I knew where I could get what I needed to live. Went back there, and within a couple of days, within a couple of minutes of being back at that house, I was loaded again, just right back in my comfort zone, happy, not worried about everything that had just happened. And so I went back to the lifestyle I'd been living. But I had this, I might clean up, I might want to be sober, because this stuff is starting to get pretty bad. And it's already been pretty bad, but now it's starting to get to where I'm getting locked up, and I can see what's going to happen. I got loaded again, and I was at my parents' house. They had let me back in because I swore that I was good, and I thought that I was good, and I wasn't good. And I had a little bit of drugs that I was going to use that night. I went in the bathroom, and as a good addict alcoholic, I was always trying to figure out just how much I needed to feel okay in the moment and still have some left over for later, right? Because later's all that matters. And I took enough of what I thought would be enough just to keep me feeling comfortable, and then, well, if I mix this one in there, I'll feel even better, but I don't want to do that because I want to save that for when I'm going to be awake, because I want to go to sleep right now. I don't know if you can relate with that, but the cocktails that you have to mix to get to where you want to feel and how you want to feel, and like a little mad scientist with a chemistry set, that was definitely how I was. And I misjudged the amounts or what was in it. I'm pretty sure that it was fentanyl, and that was my last shot. I had taken too much and I died. My mom had heard it and came in. The next thing I know is I'm coming to, and there's a boot in my face, and my pants are around my ankles, because I always wanted it to where when I was doing what I was doing in the bathroom, that if somebody walked in, I had plausible deniability. And if I'm sitting on the toilet with my pants down, that's plausible deniability. I'm in here using the bathroom. That's all I'm doing. Ignore that stuff on the counter. I'm just using the bathroom. So I come to, and the cop's there. And for some reason, I just know. I know that I'm in trouble, right? It doesn't matter. The cop doesn't care that I just died. The cop cares about what's on the counter. And I knew my mom, being the great Al-Anon that she is, had left all of my paraphernalia on the counter. Today was actually my first time hearing what had taken place on her end, which was kind of an interesting fact, that she had gone right back to packing her bags. And I'm in there just overdosed on the floor. That's a whole another side of that I hadn't heard. It's interesting. And I can't be mad about it. Can't be mad about that at all. But they took me to jail. Well, they took me to the hospital first, and I'm in there, and they got a cop in the hospital room with me, and the nurse is being extra rough because apparently they don't like ODs coming into their ER. I don't know that I can blame them, but she was being pretty rough. Came in, and they had all these electrodes and whatnot on me, and she comes in and rips them off, and she says, "Get dressed, you're going with him," and pointed to the cop, and I said, "All right," and the cop is sitting there just staring at me, and he looks at me and he says, "You know what?" He says, "Charles, I bet you're not a bad guy, but you got to get away from this because you do bad things." And I just started crying, man, because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't believe him. I said, you don't know me, man. You don't know the things that I've done, the people that I've hurt, the family that I've hurt. You don't know me. And there's no way that I can ever be the good person that you're talking about, because look what I do. This is what I do. This is the only way I know how to be. I'm a mess. So he took me in, and that was the time that they locked me up and they kept me. I went through a long legal process. I ended up going to Exodus while I was in jail because I didn't know what else I was going to do. The other times I had been arrested, they had offered me Exodus, and I'd heard of Exodus. And I heard that they kept you in there for longer than you needed to be in there. So I wasn't going to do that. This time I realized, well, I'm not going anywhere. I might as well do that. And it looks good to a judge. So I went in there. I did the reentry program first. Then I got accepted in. And Michael Vaughn had come over to the reentry program. And he took me in. And then I started to listen to a little bit. And I liked, some of the things they were talking about. I was participating. And then Patrick came in and asked me what I was going to do to stay sober when I got out. And I said, I'm going to work out and I'm going to do all this stuff. He said, that's great, for being healthy, but it's not going to keep you sober. What are you going to do to keep you sober? And he wanted to work the steps. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything else, so let's work the steps. And I did a very thorough job, man. I was in it because nothing else to this point had worked. No person can stop me. The law can't stop me. What else am I going to do? Let's try this. So we worked the steps, wrote a very thorough 4th step, and did the 5th, and I had been so honest in this 4th step that when we did that 5th step and I started to spill all this stuff and see that things were not because of her leaving, and they weren't because of my parents, my dad's drug use and alcoholism, and it wasn't because of any of that. The problem had always been me. I was always the problem. And when I got to and Patrick, to this day, man, the guy's still a great friend of mine, and the way he talked to me when I was doing that 5th step was exactly what I needed, because I didn't need to be babied. I didn't need somebody, patting my little bottom telling me it's going to be all right. I needed somebody telling me, look at how selfish you are. Look at yourself. Look at yourself for the first time. This is who you are. And when I finished that 5th step, and I finished it with Dan, not Patrick, because they had moved Patrick. Patrick was actually an inmate with me. I finished it with Dan, and I went back to my cell that night, and I felt free. Totally free. Here I am in jail, totally not free, but inside I felt free because I had, for the first time, let somebody else see who I really am. I had seen who I really am. And that burden had just been lifted off. So I did the steps to the best of my ability while I was in there, and then they shipped me off to prison. They gave me a couple years. I was in prison, and I was not doing any program. I was not praying. I was, they'd have meetings, but they're very kind of few and far in between. I was locked up in Winslow, and honestly, I just wasn't all that interested. I was interested in working out and doing my thing. And then that day came when a guy that I was hanging out with had a little bit of something, and he wanted to do it. And I did it. And I used inside of prison. And my rationale was that nobody's ever going to know. The only person that is ever going to know that I did this in here is me and my fellow inmates, and I'll probably never see these guys again when I get out. And I got out June 4th. That was the day that I walked out the gate, and I never touched anything again. But I was living a lie. I was not going to tell anybody that I had used while I was in there. And this went on for a while. I had met who's now my wife. I had sponsored guys. I had been going to meetings. One of the best things that ever happened to me was the day I got out. Patrick was at the Alano Club, and we just happened to run into each other that day. I had been out for less than a day, and he was there, and he said, let's start working the steps again. And I said, all right, let's do it. So I jumped right back in. If he hadn't been there and had dragged me back in by the hand and said, let's get started again, I don't know if I'd be standing here. I don't know if I would have the life I have today, because God put him in my life for a reason. And I firmly believe that. And so I went along and was doing the things that they do. I went to the foundation house, and that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I got structure there. I had to work a job. I had to be at certain places at certain times, and I had to go to meetings, have a sponsor, be working the steps. That right there was they call it the foundation house for a reason. It set the foundation for who I am today and what I do today. But I was living this lie at the same time. But it was okay, because now I'm sober, right? I am legitimately have not drank, have not taken a pill, I have not smoked, I have not done anything except nicotine and caffeine, which I will not give up. To this day, I'm okay. Well, then Patrick, again, I'm living in Phoenix. I'm married. I had married my wife, Leanna. I'm driving home from work one day, and he had told me about these speaker tapes, Joe Hawk and some other guy, I can't remember his name. But how they were like this hardcore, like going through the big book and talking about things. And I was listening to it on my way home from work one day, and they started talking about honesty. And how honesty is going to set, you hold on to something, and it's okay at first, but it's going to come back to get you. You have to be honest about how you live your life and the things that you're doing. And I was sitting there, and I can remember thinking, like, I'm not telling anybody about that. I'm not going to do it. Nobody knows about it but me. I'm going to take this one to my grave. And about 5 seconds later, I was like, I'm telling somebody. I know, I've got to tell somebody. And so I had called my sponsor, but he was at work. So then I called Michael Vaughn. Michael Vaughn answered, and I was like, bro, this is what's going on. I've been living this giant lie, man. And he's like, okay, thanks for calling and being honest. I was like, all right, that wasn't that big of a deal. So I started making these calls, but the thing I was worried about was my wife's going to be home from work soon, and I have to tell her this. And this woman has married me. We met at a roundup at the Apache Lake Roundup. And, I'm so proud of this year that I had and, told her that I was a year sober. Well, she married me, and I was less than a year sober. We got together. She didn't marry me when I was less than a year. I had a year at that point. But we sat down, and I said, I need to tell you something. And she sat on my lap and was ready to hear whatever this was. And I think she sat on my lap so I couldn't get away, because she didn't know what I was about to say. And so I was like, I'm about to die. But I told her, and she took a second and thought about it, and then said, I can't remember her exact words, but she told me it was okay, and that she was happy that I'd been honest, and everything was going to be all right. And so I built this thing up to be a huge deal in my head about how I lied. And, it is a big deal, but it wasn't the mountain I'd made it into. And if I had kept on to and been holding that secret today, who knows what would have happened. I could be, out there again because of that one little thing that I didn't want to admit to. So my sobriety date changed. So the 6/4, June 4th, that is my real sobriety date. Needless to say, the life that I have today because of this program is one that I never could have imagined when I was out there doing what I was doing. If somebody had told me back then, a lot of people say this and it's cliche and all that, but whatever, it's true. If somebody had told me where I'd be today, I would have told them that they were crazy and that I wanted their guy's number because he had some good stuff apparently. Right? Because I was beyond this life. I had been to meetings before and I'd seen the life that other people get to live. I'd met Michael Vaughn, who said, I used to be in this same program. I was in jail just like you are. And I was like, no, you weren't, man. You are dressed way too nice to have been that way. But he was right. I didn't know that I would have what I have today. The biggest gift that I have today, though, is just the ability to be okay. to not have to feel like when I was a kid and I was awkward and I felt like I didn't belong, that I had to use something so that I would feel like I belonged. I don't feel that way anymore. I'm okay, and it changes, and I go through periods where I'm happy and periods where I'm sad and periods where I'm agitated, and it's all right. I don't have to change the way I feel. I'm okay. Because, if I am sad or I am angry, it's going to change. It doesn't stay that way. This too shall pass. Another one of those stupid little sayings you guys have that came to mean something. My higher power, I want to talk about that. I'm not a deeply religious person. I'm not a really religious person at all, but spirituality, I went on this spiritual journey where I was reading all kinds of things, trying to figure it out, books about Zen, books about the power of thought and ideas, and then, I had heard somebody say that one of the best spiritual guides that you will ever read is the Big Book. Yeah. And I hadn't never really thought about that, but then it made sense, And then when they kind of outline in there how to pray, when I was praying, I was always praying for things that I thought that I needed, right? This is how I need my life to go. But when they say let go and let God, that kind of it sets the way of how to pray. And my prayers today is, God, I pray for your will for my life and the power to carry it out. Because you know what I need. I don't know what I need, right? I have an idea of what I need. But I think I need a Ferrari, right? That I couldn't pay the taxes on. So I have no idea what I need. My wife today, my ex-wife, I never treated her right. I was just the biggest scum, that walked, and I was just emotionally abusive, verbally abusive. I was neglectful and just a real pile. And my wife today, that's how I make my amends to my ex-wife. Because I haven't talked to my ex-wife since we split up, which is a good thing. And I haven't gone looking for her because I need to make an amends to her. Now, my amends to her is the way I treat my wife now. And it's not always perfect, but I try to be mindful of how I am treating her, how I am talking to her. Try to be there and be emotionally supportive. And, sometimes I'm tired and I'm not always perfect at it. I'm not. But I try to do the best that I can, which is all I can do. I just had my first kid, my little boy. He's back there in the green hat, little dude. And we thought we couldn't have kids, but we did IVF, and we have my son. And people would always say that kids, they change you, they change the way you feel, and when they come out, you have this instant love towards them that you can't describe, and I didn't feel that. He came out, and he was there, and I felt this is a very special time, but he was a little pink alien, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do, man. I was hanging around the nurse, because she knew what to do, so it's safe if I'm here while he's here, because she's got him. And I didn't know how to feel, but then we were in a room, the room they take you after she's delivered, and they've got you in there, and she was asleep, and he was asleep, and he was all bundled up, and he's got this little beanie on, this little badass beanie that they give him, and he made a noise, and I wasn't quite asleep, so I woken up, and I went over, and I picked him up, and I had him right here, and he made this. He's just so tiny and innocent. He made this little face where his little forehead, it's scrunched up, kind of like he was, trying to open his eyes a little bit. And in that moment, that's when it hit. And my heart hurt. It just hurt, and I couldn't understand why it hurt. And I realized that I loved this little guy. And I was thinking about that moment the other day, and I think the reason that I knew why my heart hurt was the fact that I couldn't imagine ever having to see him go through what I went through. I couldn't ever imagine having to watch him hurt himself the way that I hurt myself. I can't imagine how it must have been to be my parents watching me do the things that I do. With the amount of love that I have for him, if it's anywhere near, which I don't doubt that their love is for me, the amount of pain that I caused. And I would give my life for that kid, and I would die so that he doesn't ever have to go through to be where I am today. But that's not my choice. All I can do is be a good example and live my life in a way that hopefully sets the tone for how he wants to be. He wants to be like Dad? Cool, this is how Dad lives. I want to live in a way that shows people who I really am, right? Because this is the real me. Like me or not, this is who I am, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't need anything to feel the way I want to feel, because the way I feel in this moment is good enough. The things that I have today are good enough. It doesn't have to be any other way that I think it should be, because I'm good enough. And I probably missed a lot of things, but thank you guys for letting me speak.